My name is Carly Harrell. Together, Rosemary Lamparella and I make up the resiliency team at IU21. Our team was created out of a need to support our staff, students, and districts with trauma-informed practices. Our responsibilities include providing trainings about trauma causes and effects and self-care strategies to combat stress, as well as providing guidance for administrators to assist their schools to becoming trauma-informed. Trauma-informed practices not only help individuals who have experienced trauma, but everyone else as well. We're so excited to share this information with you today. Even though we are no longer in the classroom, Rosemary and I conduct weekly presentations, and we know it can be challenging to connect with certain people at times. We're going to walk you through some trauma-informed practices, which hopefully will allow you to make more meaningful connections with your students. And so we welcome you to Connecting with Kids. Today we're going to talk about ways to connect with kids who make it tough to connect with. We'll start out by talking about some of the reasons why kids might not be connecting to our remote classes. Then we'll discuss strategies to improve those connections. Finally, we recognize that having a relationship with students is critical for their engagement and success. We'll walk you through some ways to do this for even the most challenging students. Let's start off with a fun clip. See if you can recognize any of these behaviors in your students while we watch this video.
Right, let's see which students decide to join the meeting today. Hey everybody.
Hey, Miss Johnson! OMG, how have you been? Isn't this pandemic crazy? I'm so bored.
It has been very crazy. How are you?
I'm so happy you asked. I've read, I've painted, I've played all the video games, I dyed my hair, I've made 1 million TikToks, I've done puzzles, I watched all of Netflix.
Wow, that is a lot. How's the classwork coming? I see you haven't turned in any of your assignments. Katie, I love your pet. What's its name?
This is Coconut. This is my other pet, Hot Dog.
Oh, you have more than one?
Yeah. This is Sweetie Pie.
Wow, 3 is a lot. But let's get back to the lesson, okay? Sarah? Sarah? Okay, well, it seems Sarah has more important things to do. Is there anybody else that can help with answering number 2? Macy, what did you get for question number 5?
Okay, well, as you can see here on my paper, I got...
Macy, all I can see is your eye. If you could, scoot back from the camera just a little bit, that would be really great. Kyle, do you have anything to add to the conversation? Kyle? Kyle?
No, I didn't get that one. Yeah, sorry.
Jared, are you there? Are you pulling the reconnecting prank? Jared? Does anybody have any questions? Damien, what are you doing? You're making me dizzy, man.
Oh, sorry, Miss J. My mom told me that I had to clean up my mess or she wouldn't give me my Xbox back.
Could you maybe do that after we finish the lesson?
I can ask her, I guess. Mom!
I see Matt got creative with his free time. Is that you in the background eating, proudly displaying your cat, and taking a nap? Wow.
Hey guys, I made it.
Emma, are you listening? I know you don't feel like being on camera, and I totally understand that, but I do need to know if you're understanding everything. So can you show me a thumbs up or a sideways thumb or an upside down thumb? That'd be great. Love the background, Sonia. Very fun.
This is Bubbles.
A trauma-informed lens means showing sensitivity to the impact that trauma may have had on yourself or others, understanding tools to help others during times of stress, and supporting a system of change which reduces the chances of re-traumatization. Let's use this lens to think about why kids are not connecting to remote learning. Many people, adults and kids alike, encounter some typical barriers to remote learning that make it harder to connect, participate, and stay engaged. First, and we probably all know this by now, but internet accessibility and quality really varies by location, provider, weather, number of people using it, and what it's being asked to do. For example, sometimes we give PDs from the office here, and there's a lag on the videos we share, or our voices don't seem to line up with our mouths. As a student, if the teacher's internet is glitchy, it might be hard to stay engaged. If the student's internet is glitchy, it might be hard to connect at all. A common thing that slows down the internet is having your video on. This gets frustrating for students and the teachers who want to see them. Levels of anxiety in general have skyrocketed through the pandemic. In a virtual classroom, many students may be arriving with heightened anxiety about their living or financial situation, their family's health, or how everyone's getting along with each other after being in constant close proximity. The remote learning platforms that we're using can cause anxiety themselves. When your camera is on, everyone can see you at all times, but you can't tell who's looking at you. You can't tell who's screenshotting you and saving the picture to bully you later. For some students, this is really unsettling, and it can make them feel unsafe and stressed out, and both of these are emotions that are incompatible with learning. They may feel like they have to perform, at least facially, for the entire duration of cameras being on, which is exhausting. Video calls also make it hard to read nonverbal social cues, which we depend upon to understand what people are thinking, feeling, and what they really mean. In person-to-person situations, you unconsciously mimic your conversational partner's faces, which helps you comprehend their emotions and make connections. With the pixelation, blurriness, and overall imperfection of a partner's face via video, not to mention only being able to see part of that person, we are at a serious disadvantage communicating here. The brain does not like being at such a disadvantage. The subtle sound and visual problems cause our brains and those of our students to scramble and try to fill in the gaps. This makes us tired and anxious without an obvious or conscious cause. It adds significantly to our cognitive load, which again detracts from our ability to take in and remember new information. There's even a term for this called Zoom fatigue. Symptoms include reluctance to join a video call even when it's for socialization, meltdowns following remote sessions, fidgeting or difficulty focusing outside of what the student normally demonstrates, unusual frustration during meetings, and physical complaints. A final common barrier to remote learning is that of attention, or rather, inattention. The younger the student, the more their typical interactions involve activity and motion. These are greatly reduced by sitting in front of a screen. It takes a huge degree of self-regulation to stay committed and focused upon computer-delivered content, especially when it's recorded or when you know the teacher can't see what you're doing. I have been delivering PDs remotely since March. I know how important it is to the presenter for the attendees to be engaged, and I also like to learn. And yet, I almost always find myself multitasking when attending a Zoom PD. Imagine how challenging it is, likely, for students who may not be as motivated, may have trouble with the content, or may have distractions at home or in their heads. The barriers on the slide before this are pretty commonplace and maybe even likely to be encountered by most students over the course of remote learning. Some students will have more trouble with remote learning due to having experienced or currently experiencing trauma. Trauma is the subjective experience of feeling overwhelmed, harmed, or threatened by an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that results in long-lasting negative effects on a person's well-being. Experiencing trauma impacts a person's view of the world and the people in it, and often shakes that person's sense of safety. After experiencing trauma, a person often craves the safety of predictability and feels that people they encounter are untrustworthy. Brains make sense of things by making predictions based on facial expressions and body movement. The delays, freezing, and out-of-sync video and audio that come with remote instruction leave many of our brain's predictions unconfirmed. Especially for a student who has experienced trauma, the entire remote learning situation is unpredictable and unfulfilling. This does not encourage their attendance or participation in remote instruction sessions. Also at play here is how the brain determines that someone is trustworthy. We consider whether a person looks us in the eye, has a shifty gaze, or if their face looks guilty. A student who has experienced trauma is already more suspicious and perhaps hypersensitive to these nonverbal cues. They constantly survey the people around them to keep a good sense of the level of danger each person presents. In the remote learning setting, it's impossible to tell if someone is looking you in the eye. Lots of people are looking around elsewhere and may look shifty, and there's not enough detail to truly and accurately judge many nuanced expressions. This creates a sense of untrustworthiness that compounds an already shaky level of trust coming from a student who has experienced trauma. In turn, this may lead to students who are unwilling to sign on to remote instruction or who refuse to turn on their cameras. Mental health issues often come from experiencing trauma. With the added stress and anxiety of the pandemic and remote learning, many people are experiencing mental health issues for the first time. Those who already had them have reported worsening symptoms. These can stand in the way of students logging in. You can probably imagine how serious symptoms of depression or anxiety could hinder someone from getting up, dressed, fed, and/or logged in. And let's not forget about bullying. A lot of people don't want to have their camera on because someone could screenshot them or their house and use that against them.
So, how can you make contact with remote learners and their families? First, let's recognize that if a student is there in the first place, they have some level of interest or engagement in learning. That's a win we sometimes forget. Contact with students can be virtual or in person. We're going to provide you with strategies and resources for each. There's a saying in basketball that goes like this: one score makes one player happy. One assist makes two players happy. A lot of times, students need an assist for our connections to be successful. Let's run down a few foundational strategies that can be a win for you and your students. First, ensure that your students have the skills needed for etiquette online. Don't assume they already know. Take the time to model and directly teach turn-taking, how to appear on camera, and so on. Second, tell your students how you would like them to respond to questions online. It may be different than in person. Do you prefer a note in the chat, a hand raised, or do you prefer they wait to be called upon? I just went through 2 graduate courses online, and both professors never stated this anywhere. It was so awkward because I didn't want to interrupt the lecture. Third, tell your students what to do and how to contact you if they lose their connection with the lecture. Also, do they need their notes for class? Upload their work by a certain time? Don't assume that they already know. Our final recommendation is to make sure that you spend time creating your go-to list of technological resources that you feel comfortable with using and that the kids can connect to. These strategies will help you set the stage for making good connections with students. Connecting with kids virtually is likely a new skill we've all picked up in the past year out of necessity. There are some benefits to virtual synchronous instruction. We can give immediate feedback to students. It gives students opportunities to make connections with peers and with learning, and students who are shy, insecure, or have anxiety can have more anonymity. Research suggests that a variety is the key to getting in contact with all your students. Variety allows the learners to engage in conversation with you in ways that they feel comfortable. Some of them are likely familiar to you, but it is worth taking a look at alternate ways you may not have considered before. Take a look at this list. What things on this list are you already doing? Listen on the next 2 slides for new ways to contact students. Apps are something almost all of our students are familiar with. They're easy to download and very user-friendly. The variety that they offer makes them ideal for diversity of contact. Flipgrid is a wonderful app that allows you and your students to make time-limited video recordings, which you can share and respond to. Remind can be used by students and families. It allows you to send messages from your phone without sharing the number or from your computer. You can post about upcoming activities, reminders, or classroom shout-outs, or send links. Class Dojo is great for elementary kids. They can create a character, and you are able to recognize them both academically and behaviorally. This information can also be shared out with parents. Each of the underlined titles here can take you to a how-to link for using that app. At the end of this presentation, you will be given a web address to download this presentation and connect to anything that is underlined as a hot link. Because it can be difficult to read student faces, research recommends making frequent check-ins. This can be verbal check-ins, but polls, surveys, and work groups are another way to connect. Polls can be used as assessments for learning, but they can also be opportunities for student voice. Polls can be used to develop classroom rewards, drive instruction, or learn more about your students, or let them learn more about you. Polls can be anonymous or not, but they still often give you a count of the students who participated, so you can see if everyone responded. Zoom offers a poll feature, but you can also use Poll Everywhere or Mentimeter as well. These choices allow for anonymous participation and build student confidence in responding, especially when they're unsure. You can also poll students about how they're feeling at the start of every class. Mentimeter offers a lot of creative ways to get a class-wide picture on how your kids are doing. Surveys can be a little longer and give you the ability to get a little bit more feedback. You can create surveys on Google Forms, which can automatically create a spreadsheet of responses. SurveyMonkey is another way to create simple forms. Digital work groups are a way to put all of your content into one spot for students to join and collaborate. We are all likely familiar with Google Classroom. We recognize that some districts do not allow Google Classroom, so we have some other suggestions as well. Schoology is another system that allows you to integrate various resources together. OpenStax has courses, lesson slides, and worksheets for collaboration. Canvas is another learning management system that allows for content to be assembled in one space. We recommend that you have both synchronous and asynchronous ways to connect with students and their families to get the most responses. You can create a quick classroom website with links on Google for free, and it only takes a few minutes. This can provide links to recorded lessons, homework, or a weekly class update. This is also a great way for families to quickly find the information they need to get in touch with you or the school. Send emails or virtual cards to individual students. Personal emails are a better way to connect with students than group messages if you want them to respond. Why not send an e-card for their birthday, or a reward certificate, or just a quick note about something they did well in class that day? Video calls can be great one-to-one, so you can read body language and facial cues. But watching faces and reading their expressions can be exhausting on a regular basis. Keep non-academic video calls brief to reduce fatigue. Sometimes it's just better to call. On a phone call, a student may be more tuned in to tonal shifts, brief hesitations, or the rhythm of someone's breathing. Jamboard, Edmodo, Padlet, and Wakelet are all ways to share out academic resources or connect. You can build up class-wide connections by having a gratitude Padlet, sharing pet photos or hobbies. It also gives you more opportunities to learn about their skills, talents, and interests. Once you are able to reach a student or their family, let them know how and when you will reach out to them, as well as how and when they should contact you. Try to communicate at the same time or times every day and in the same format. The way in which we once connected with students has changed, possibly forever. The nonverbal communication and feedback we got from students helped us to respond and be more effective educators. Some of us find it difficult to assimilate to the virtual world, not always because of technology, but the loss we feel from the connectedness we once had with our students. The movement we had throughout the classroom also built connections. Even the schools we were used to teaching in can affect the culture of a classroom. After all, sharing a unified space is symbolic of learning. To close out today with our third objective, we hope to help you think about this virtual or hybrid world differently. No, it's not the same as in person, but there are numerous ways to create community and culture and build the relationships you want with your students. The benefits of these relationships include academic success, emotional safety, improved parent interactions, and can boost the positive behavior in students for years afterwards. The expression "pull back the curtain" often refers to trying to see the light behind something. Research has shared some strategies for relationship building that can brighten up our approaches. One priority is predictability. As we said earlier, every child's world has been disrupted, and there is less predictability than usual. Predictability is part of creating an emotionally safe environment. This foundation will allow students to feel more comfortable trusting and sharing information with you. It is recommended to start off each class softly with a reflection, journal prompt, quick game, or student breakout room chat. Every Friday could be show and tell. Every Monday could be share your favorite song, or whatever other engaging activity you may think would work for your class and making connections. Creating opportunities for connection. Greet each student by name each day, even if it's while you take attendance. Students are more connected to teachers who share their world, their interests, pets, hobbies. Get to learn their skills and interests with class surveys, and weave that knowledge into your instruction. The 2x10 theory was pioneered by Principal Myron Dewick, and it suggests that teachers spend 2 minutes a day for 10 days trying to connect with challenging students. Even if the student exhibits no desire for contact, teachers can subtly show that they care. Incorporate group work through breakout rooms, academic resource sharing, or projects into most of your classes. Allow parents to be guest speakers or have virtual lunch together. Weaving self-care into your connections is beneficial for you and your students. One way to do this is to create an appreciation or gratitude activity for students to do together or with their families. Practicing gratitude can be contagious and impacts the climate of the entire class. Engaging families improves buy-in. Mailing, emailing, or having virtual gratitude boards are all ways to accomplish self-care, social-emotional learning, and create connections. Provide opportunities and supports for sharing, such as a feelings chart that students can use for language support. They may also be able to communicate feelings non-verbally through drawing or sharing pictures. Checking in on students' emotions can help keep a pulse on their well-being, as well as show that you care. Flexibility is the middle name of most educators these days. Try to extend your flexibility to areas you haven't before. Remember, schools provide uniformity, but home may not. Consider that there may be other factors at play that you're unaware of, and then ask yourself, what will work for that student? Can you provide alternate responses, varied office hours to work with students individually, Record your lectures for students to review again later. Some students focus better later in the day. Flexibility also includes rethinking behavior. Try to rethink about behavior as a form of communication. Behavior in the classroom is often a sign that a student needs help with the content, focusing, or something outside of school. Your calm presence will let them know that you care. Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and some students tend to show irritability, difficulty sitting still, or focusing. With stress and change, students' physical and mental capacities to handle academic workload are diminished, and you may need to consider modifying, adapting, chunking, or simplifying your lessons that you used to deliver in person. Provide opportunities for enrichment. Many students need a break from the monotony of virtual academic instruction. Intentional integration of brain breaks can provide energizing movement that students seek. They can also be calming and model regulation strategies students can use outside of class if they live in chaotic households. Enrichment allows you to get to know your students' talents, skills, lifestyles, and interests. They can share projects or interests with students in another class or with the school community at large. A virtual art or talent show, a virtual field trip, allows students to participate in a variety of ways. Weave social-emotional learning into your day. Younger kids might like a feelings chart, as we mentioned, but you can use something called a blob tree with older students to check in on their emotions. Recognizing feelings is the first step toward regulation. Likewise, it can be difficult to read faces when students don't have their cameras on, so this is a good way to get a pulse on how they're doing. Safety and self-efficacy can be built when students are given chances to feel empowered. To do this, let them share in decision-making and provide choice as much as possible. Some examples may be voting between two reading articles that cover the same topic, having a choice of an assessment, a choice of the way that instruction is delivered. Facilitate thinking about their decision-making and learning with questions like, were you happy as a class that you decided to read this article? Why or why not? This lets them think critically about their choices, which is also empowering for children.
One choice that students need to make every day is whether they turn on their camera or not. According to Education Week, the majority of educators report that this is not a choice they're empowering students to make, and that students' cameras are required to be on. As PD presenters, we definitely find it easier to teach if our learners' cameras are on, so we get it. Even though the visual feedback we get isn't perfect, it's better than talking to a blank screen. However, for many reasons, some students prefer to keep their cameras off. Of course, there's the students who don't want their teacher to see that they're watching TV or playing a video game or hanging out in a different room. But there's also students who have other reasons to want their camera off, and it's these reasons that we want to draw your attention to. According to the CDC, depression and anxiety have been on the rise in children ages 6 to 17 since 2003. And it's now estimated that about 10% of children between the ages of 3 and 17 have been diagnosed with one or the other. Virtual instruction and the pandemic have made it difficult for these at-risk students. They have worries about how they'll be viewed by their peers and themselves on top of the normal feelings that middle and high school students feel as part of their development. Some teens worry that images from class will be posted on social media. The CDC also reports that approximately 9% of children between the ages of 2 and 7 have been diagnosed with ADHD. These students have difficulty focusing and sitting still under normal conditions, so the virtual world can be tough for them. We mention these statistics to help refocus your trauma-informed lens when it comes to viewing their behavior, again, as a form of communication about the struggles that they may be facing. We've all seen and maybe even laughed at some of the bloopers that people have experienced on video with family in the background, but what if that was your house and you were a kid and could do nothing about it? Sometimes what's going on behind and around students may be embarrassing, upsetting, or even illegal. They could have people at home who are partially dressed, behaving inappropriately, or doing things the student does not want classmates or school staff to see. Maybe they aren't home, and wherever they are, they'd prefer to keep private. Maybe their location needs to be kept secret for safety reasons, like being undocumented or hiding from an abusive parent. Most virtual platforms are not that secure, and therefore neither is the visual or auditory information that's shared across them. Having a camera on allows everyone to see into a part of that student's life that they may not want known. While a simple solution could be to put up a virtual background, this can really disrupt the internet speed and make it hard for the student to participate, hear what's being said, or stay connected to the meeting. Would you rather see the student or have them receive your lesson in the best way possible? We all recognize that students are not able to spend as much time in front of the computer as they do in the classroom while they're at home. At home, they're faced with other challenges. They might be caring for siblings or sick family members, and houses with multiple siblings can create issues with Wi-Fi connections. Siblings may need to talk at the same time for their classes, which can also create issues if the only place they have to work is the kitchen table. We recommend that students have their own desk and workspace, but for some families, this expense and this space is not possible. We've known several students who have missed school to work in order to help support their families during this turbulent time. So, when you're building connections and relationships with students, consider allowing them to choose whether their cameras are on or off. If you want their cameras on, try to build in small group sessions where they might be more comfortable turning them on. Teach them how to use a virtual background and see if it works for them. Chat privately with students to find out if they have concerns while still being considerate of how you lead that discussion. You don't need to know what trauma a person experienced in order to support them in a trauma-informed way that's sensitive to their needs. So, if you're not requiring students to keep their cameras on, how can you know if they're engaged? Consider beginning with a regulation activity at the start of the day and after a transition. This will help students and you focus on the present and improve focus for the next activity. Grounding and centering activities can be recorded, written in an instructional packet, or spoken in live time. For example, you might ask students to scan their bodies for where they feel tense and where they feel relaxed. Then have them silently tell the tense parts to relax so that they feel the same way the calm parts do. During your virtual lessons, continue to support regulation by creating even more opportunities than usual to take breaks and move around. Don't forget to model your own regulation by pausing to take breaks and demonstrate strategies when you or the students may need it. Students who are able to connect to what they are learning about are more engaged. This is especially important for students to gain a deeper understanding of how the material relates to them personally in their own lives and the world around them. Guiding questions such as, what does this story remind you of? How are you like this person? What events in this article seem like something you've heard before? Serve as a type of formative assessment and help students to recall important concepts or ideas. Frequent check-ins keep students on task. This is where polls, surveys, and check-ins come in. Change it up. Instead of asking for yes or no responses, ask, in a word, how did you feel about this topic? Rate this assignment from 1 to 5. Use a reaction emoji to answer the following question. Think about doing a small group check-in too. Divide your class into breakout rooms for a collaborative assignment and then drop in and check up. They may be more comfortable answering honestly in front of a few peers rather than the whole group. You can schedule 5-minute mini conferences to find out how they're doing, see if they have any questions, and help motivate them. As we said earlier, students rely on facial expressions and other nonverbal cues for feedback. And in the virtual world, these interactions are less frequent. So assist your students by providing high-quality verbal feedback or written feedback that focuses on their process and effort. Try to remain unbiased instead of saying, try harder or show more effort. It might be better to say, putting more time into reviewing your work for spelling errors would be a good use of your time and help improve your grade. Encourage students to provide each other with feedback as well before turning in assignments. This helps them get to know their peers more and can improve the quality of their work. Finally, make sure your feedback is timely. If it's a large assignment, just give them a window of time that you expect the work to be graded by, so they're not left wondering if you missed grading their assignment. Likewise, if they haven't turned something in, let them know. Maybe they finished but forgot to press the send button. We've all done that at one time or another. Virtual activities such as a talent show, spirit day, or celebration help build your relationship and keep students engaged. You can use these opportunities as rewards at the beginning or end of a class. Maybe you let each student pick a song and each one is played at the beginning or end of a class. Maybe you have a daily talent mini show that serves as brain breaks halfway through class for a whole week. Our final suggestion is to motivate students with technology. Common Sense Media has reviews and ratings for all types of ed tech tools. They can be searched by cost and content area. Peardeck, Slido, Quizzes, Edmodo, Smart Exchange, and tons more are reviewed. The key to this is variety. Find several ed tech tools that you can use on a regular basis and that appeal to multiple modalities. Some students may enjoy a web quest, others may want to work with a partner or small group. There are interactive activities through the Smart Exchange or Desmos, which is a math website. It's not about being the best at technology, but it is about providing opportunities for all students to be engaged. This slide shows several ideas for how to build relationships with others. Teaching with Love and Logic by Jim Fay has a great suggestion about how to start building a relationship by commenting on things that you notice about a child. He calls it the one-sentence intervention. He stresses that the things you notice should be factual and definitely not about behavior or academics. He gives many examples such as, "I noticed you're wearing red shoes today. I noticed that." He then suggests doing this noticing 2 times a week for 3 weeks. If you click on the comment on things you notice about the student bullet, you'll find a PDF that explains this further. Another research-backed idea is the praise to criticism ratio of 4 or 5 positives to 1 negative. This can be really hard to maintain, and sometimes you end up really digging deep for those positives, but it's also so important to maintaining a positive relationship with a student. A final idea to work into your everyday interactions with kids, especially those who are upset, is to use validating statements. These are statements that tell kids that you recognize how they feel, you care, and you are there to support them. Using a validating statement does not mean that you necessarily agree with whatever choices the student made or behaviors they demonstrated. These statements just mean that you are recognizing their feelings and you want to be there for them.
Please join the CLIU Curriculum and Instruction Department's training sessions for the rest of January and entering into February. February's focus is literacy. If you're interested in earning Act 48 credit for today's session, click on the link at the bottom of the slide or visit the CLIU PD Ready webpage. Thank you so much for watching our presentation about connecting with kids. We are always available to support you and can be contacted via the email addresses and phone numbers on this slide. Please use the bit.ly link on this slide to download today's slide deck so you can have access to all the links we included throughout.